History doesn't overwhelm you. Is there anything that does?
Yeah, I think stuff to do with family overwhelms me quite a bit.
The royal world has been shaken once again. During a recent event, cameras caught Prince Andrew giving what many are calling a death stare toward Princess Catherine, a moment that sent shockwaves through the palace. But what happened next left everyone speechless. Prince William, known for his calm and composed nature, did something no one expected. It was sudden, bold, and filled with emotion, a clear message that Catherine would never stand alone. Enough is enough, his actions seemed to say. Join us. What the future king did right after that glare will leave you absolutely stunned. The rift that shook the palace. Sometimes, to understand the depth of a royal storm, you must go back to where the first crack began. And this one started with words, cruel, careless words that changed everything. According to royal insiders, Prince Andrew once made a comment about Catherine, the Princess of Wales, that left the palace cold. It wasn't just a passing remark. It was sharp, laced with bitterness, and heavy with jealousy. As royal biographer Andrew Looney revealed in his book, The Fall of the House of York, the remark came at a painful time. Soon after Queen Elizabeth II's death, the family was still mourning, trying to hold on to each other in their grief. But instead of unity, Andrew's words cut through that fragile peace. At the very moment Catherine had stepped into a larger, more public role, Andrew's tongue became his weapon. He couldn't hide his resentment, Looney noted. For years, Catherine had become a beloved figure, the quiet strength behind the royal image, the woman who carried herself with calm grace no matter the storm. Many saw her as the fresh light in a weary institution. Yet behind palace walls, envy was brewing. Andrew, who had once enjoyed his own royal prominence, now watched as Catherine earned the nation's admiration, a respect that seemed to escape him. Instead of support, there were whispers. Behind closed doors, Andrew reportedly mocked her, his words carrying the sting of jealousy. For Prince William, this was not just disrespect, it was betrayal. Catherine was his heart, his partner, and his greatest ally in preparing for the throne. To hear his uncle speak with such disdain broke something deep inside him. That was the moment the bond between William and Andrew truly shattered. William's reaction was quiet, but firm. He didn't need to shout or confront. His silence was colder than words. Insiders say he began to pull away, distancing himself from the man he once called family. It was no longer about rivalry, it was about protecting what mattered most. To William, Catherine wasn't just his wife. She was the symbol of the monarchy's future, and he would not allow anyone, not even his uncle, to tear her down. But this rift didn't fade with time, it deepened. The tension between the two princes grew heavier with every public scandal surrounding Andrew. The once playful uncle had become a shadow over the royal name, and William, with his sense of duty and discipline, couldn't stand by and watch. He had always carried himself with dignity, something he expected from every member of the family. Yet, Andrew's actions had brought shame, and now his cruel words toward Catherine had made things unforgivable. In the heart of the palace, smiles became strained and conversations shorter. The warmth between them had turned to ice. Whenever they crossed paths, the air was thick with tension, unspoken, but painfully clear. The family tried to appear united, but those who knew the truth could see the cracks forming beneath the surface. Catherine, ever graceful, remained silent. She neither responded nor retaliated. Her quiet strength only made her shine brighter, and perhaps that was what frustrated Andrew even more. He made it clear through his actions that loyalty to Catherine came before family ties. Respect is not given by title, he once said. It's earned by conduct. Those who witnessed his quiet defiance knew exactly whom that message was meant for. From then on, the palace corridors carried a chill whenever William and Andrew were near. The feud had grown into something deeper, a silent war of principles and pride. And though no public words were ever exchanged, the distance between them said it all. The once close relatives had become strangers under the same roof. One stood for duty, love, and quiet strength. The other for resentment, regret, and the fading echoes of lost respect. And so, the rift between Prince William and Prince Andrew became more than a family disagreement. It became a reflection of the changing tides within the royal family itself. One era ending, another beginning. And in that silent divide, the future king made one thing clear. The days of silence in the face of cruelty were over, but this feud didn't start from the comments again. The prince who fell from grace. There was a time when Prince Andrew stood tall in the shadow of his mother, Queen Elizabeth II. He was the charming, daring second son, a man of action, admired by many for his bravery and confidence. During his years in the Royal Navy, he fought in the Falklands War, showing courage that earned him respect both at home and abroad. People spoke of him with pride, calling him the Queen's handsome hero. But time has a way of revealing what lies behind the shine. What once seemed like strength slowly turned into scandal. Before the whispers about Catherine ever reached the palace halls, Andrew's fall had already begun. It all started with friendships that should never have existed, ties to people whose lives were drenched in darkness. When the world learned of his association with Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell, the storm began. Photos emerged, stories surfaced, and the proud prince found himself surrounded by shadows he could no longer hide from. In 2014, Virginia Giuffre came forward with serious accusations. She claimed that as a 17-year-old, she had been trafficked to Andrew by Epstein and Maxwell. Her story was haunting, her voice unshaken. The allegations sent shockwaves through the royal family. Andrew denied everything, insisting he had done nothing wrong. Yet, his words could not quiet the storm. Years later, as public outrage grew, Andrew agreed to a television interview, one meant to clear his name. The interview aired on the BBC, and within minutes, the world watched in disbelief. His tone, his explanations, his lack of empathy, it all fell flat. He denied ever meeting Giuffre, even though a photograph seemed to show otherwise. He insisted he was at a Pizza Express in Woking on the night of the alleged incident, a detail that became the subject of endless ridicule. Then came the strangest part. Andrew claimed that Giuffre's story about dancing with him while he was sweaty was false because he had temporarily lost the ability to sweat after an adrenaline overdose during the war.
I have a peculiar medical condition, which is that I don't sweat, or I didn't sweat at the time, and that was, oh, is she?
The statement, instead of clearing his name, left viewers stunned. Many saw it as an excuse that bordered on the unbelievable. That interview, meant to rebuild his image, destroyed what little remained of it. Overnight, public opinion turned completely against him. The charm that once made him the nation's favorite son was gone. In its place stood a man the world no longer trusted. By 2020, the pressure had become too much. Andrew stepped back from royal duties, but the damage was done. He had become a symbol of disgrace, a reminder of how far a prince could fall. Then on January 2022 came the final blow. Queen Elizabeth, with a heavy heart, stripped her son of his military titles and royal patronages.
Buckingham Palace has announced that Prince Andrew is returning his royal and military titles to the Queen and will no longer be referred to as His Royal Highness.
From that day, he was no longer allowed to use His Royal Highness in any official capacity. For a man whose life had been built on titles, honor, and royal privilege, it was a crushing loss. Behind palace doors, those who once stood by him began to fade away. Invitations stopped coming. His presence became uncomfortable, even within the royal circle. What once was a life of grandeur now felt like exile. Still, Andrew held on to hope. He believed time would soften hearts, that forgiveness might come if he stayed quiet long enough. But the world did not forget. The image of a fallen prince, once brave, now broken, remained etched in the public mind. When the lawsuit against him in the United States was settled out of court in 2022, it ended the legal chapter, but not the public judgment. The sum he paid was never disclosed, yet the price he truly paid was far greater. His reputation, his dignity, and his place within the royal family. Once, Prince Andrew had walked with confidence beside the world's most powerful figures. Now, he walks in the shadows of his own choices. The man who once wore medals and titles now carries the weight of disgrace. And though he may still hope for redemption, one thing is clear: the trust he lost may never return. His story stands as a reminder that no crown, no bloodline, and no title can shield a man from the truth. Charles's heart versus William's resolve. For years, the royal family has been no stranger to storms, but none have shaken its foundation quite like the shadow surrounding Prince Andrew. Once a proud figure of service and confidence, His name has now become tied to scandal and shame, and while he may still walk the same palace halls, his place within the royal family has never felt more uncertain. To King Charles and Prince William, Andrew's downfall meant more than public embarrassment. It became a test of character, of loyalty, and of what it truly means to serve the crown. Yet, the two men who hold the future of the monarchy in their hands could not have seen the matter more differently. For Prince William, Andrew's presence had long become a burden. In his eyes, the crown demanded purity, not perfection, but integrity. And Andrew, with his string of controversies and reckless behavior, no longer fit that image. Every decision reflects the crown, a royal aide once said, and William believed it deeply. To him, Andrew's scandals weren't private matters. They were stains that would forever linger on the royal name. Over the years, William's patience began to wear thin. He saw his uncle as someone who clung to his privileges while refusing to face the truth. While William had spent his life building a reputation of duty, family, and honor, Andrew's conduct stood in painful contrast. It was not just the accusations that troubled him. It was the attitude, the refusal to show humility, and the arrogance that still lingered even after the world had turned its back. And then came the remark about Catherine. It was cruel, unnecessary, and deeply revealing. To William, it wasn't merely jealousy, it was disrespect. Catherine, the woman who had stood beside him through everything, the woman the nation adored, was not just his wife, she was the future queen. That moment changed everything. Whatever small thread of understanding still connected William and Andrew finally snapped. In private, William made it clear that his uncle's path back into public royal life was closed. There would be no second chances, no quiet return. As long as I have a say, he reportedly told close aides, he will not stand beside us again. It was a decision made not in anger, but in principle. For William, protecting Catherine and preserving the dignity of the monarchy were non-negotiable. But King Charles saw the world through a different lens. His heart was torn between two impossible roles, brother and king. One demanded compassion, the other demanded justice. Since childhood, Charles had known Andrew's flaws and his strengths. He had seen him at his best, brave, charming, loyal, and at his worst, when pride had led him astray. Despite everything, that brotherly bond still flickered like a dim light that refused to go out. Behind closed doors, Charles never completely turned his back on Andrew. When the scandals reached their peak and Andrew's reputation collapsed, it was Charles who quietly offered support. During Andrew's most difficult time, when his legal troubles mounted in America, Charles reportedly provided a financial loan to help settle the matter. It was not a gesture of approval, it was an act of compassion, a brother reaching out to another who had lost his way. But Charles also knew what that kindness cost him. As king, his duty was to the crown above all else. The monarchy's strength lies in its trust, and Andrew's name had shaken that trust to its core. Every photograph, every headline, every whisper about Andrew pulled at the fabric of royal dignity. Charles could no longer pretend the damage wasn't real. This is where the quiet divide between father and son began to show. William believed that forgiveness without accountability weakened the monarchy. Charles believed that unity, even among the flawed, could strengthen it. The two men shared the same blood, the same purpose, but not the same vision. Charles's heart leaned toward family, toward keeping the ties intact, no matter how fragile they had become. After all, he had lived through decades of royal fractures, his parents' struggles, his own failed marriage, the years of cold silence between his sons. He knew how division could haunt a family for generations. To him, completely cutting Andrew off felt cruel, even dangerous. The monarchy, he believed, could not afford half measures. If it was to survive the modern age, it had to be firm, clean, and transparent. The world was watching, and the future king wanted to prove that even within the royal family, consequences mattered. So while Charles occasionally reached out to Andrew, offering small gestures of brotherly care, William quietly built walls. He did not shout, he did not argue, but his silence spoke louder than words. To him, Andrew's chapter within the royal fold was already closed. And in that silence, the royal family found itself caught between two worlds, one ruled by a king's heart, the other by a prince's resolve. Behind the palace doors, the tension lingers still. A brother who longs for redemption, a son who demands responsibility, a father and heir standing on opposite sides of a wound that refuses to heal. the crown has seen wars, losses, and betrayals. But perhaps its hardest battles are the ones fought within, between love and duty, forgiveness and justice. And as long as both Charles and William wear the weight of those choices, the shadow of Andrew's fall will never truly leave the royal walls. The pain of a prince's decision. There are moments when silence says more than words ever could, and in the halls of the royal family, Prince William's silence toward his uncle, Prince Andrew, speaks volumes. Behind the calm smiles and polite gestures lies a wall of pain, disappointment, and quiet determination. For William, the matter is simple, too simple perhaps for those who wish to see a softer side. In his eyes, Andrew cannot return. Not in grand ceremonies, not in quiet, private appearances, not even in the smallest of roles. The damage has been done, and no amount of time or explanation can repair it. Anger reportedly fills the air. Insiders speak of private discussions that turn tense, of William's calm voice suddenly edged with steel. He sees no room for compromise, no path back for his disgraced uncle. This is not revenge, at least not in William's heart. It is protection. Protection for the monarchy, for Catherine, and for the future he is meant to lead. To him, this is not just a family dispute. It is a test of strength and principle. The differences between father and son have become visible, not in open conflict, but in quiet choices. King Charles, torn between duty and love, still believes in the faint hope of family unity. William, however, has drawn a clear line. That line became most visible during Catherine's Together at Christmas Carol service in the year 2024. It was meant to be a night of warmth, of family and faith, a celebration of kindness and hope. Yet Andrew and his former wife, Sarah Ferguson, were not on the guest list. Officially, it was explained away as a matter of limited space. But those who understood royal life knew the truth. The decision had meaning. William and Catherine did not want Andrew present at an event that stood for harmony and trust. His very presence, they felt, would cast a shadow over the evening. And so, behind the smiles and glowing candles, the message was unmistakable. Then came Easter of 2025. The royal family gathered for the traditional service at Windsor, and the cameras were ready. But William and Catherine were nowhere to be seen. Some called it coincidence, others saw it as a choice. Whatever the truth, the image spoke loudly. The heir to the throne had chosen distance. He would not stand beside his uncle before the nation. These small gestures, these quiet absences, carry a weight that cannot be ignored. Each one adds another stone to the wall separating the two men. Charles, still hoping to preserve some sense of brotherly connection, continues to reach out in private. William, however, stands firm in public, shaping what the future monarchy will look like under his reign. A monarchy that, in his view, has no space for scandal or second chances. And yet, in the shadows of all this strength, there is pain. For no matter how justified William feels, this is still family. Behind every decision lies the ache of loss, the loss of trust, of shared laughter, of what once was. The royal family is often seen as unshakable, but inside, they bleed like anyone else. There were whispers that Andrew still held on to hope, that somewhere in his heart, he believed there could be redemption. Maybe time would heal the wounds, maybe forgiveness would come. But that fragile hope did not last long. Just as talk of reconciliation began to surface, Andrew made another move, one that destroyed what little goodwill remained. The line had been crossed for the last time. Whatever bridge remained between them was gone, and with it, Andrew's last chance at returning to royal life. Now the pain lingers, silent, invisible, but heavy. For William, every choice is a reminder that leadership sometimes demands sacrifice. He must protect the crown, even if it means turning away from his own blood. For Charles, every passing day brings the quiet sorrow of watching two people he loves drift further apart. And for Andrew, the man once called the Queen's favorite son, the truth has become clear. Forgiveness from the public may never come, and the doors of the monarchy are forever closed. So now back to the stare. When did it occur, and what was William's reaction? Let's find out. The stare that stole the funeral. It all began on the 16th of September 2025. Its stone walls catching the soft light of dawn. The air carried the scent of damp earth and fading summer blooms. Crowds lined the nearby streets, hushed and respectful, their faces marked with sorrow. Inside the cathedral, time itself seemed to slow. The atmosphere was thick with emotion. Dark, graceful flowers lined the aisles, chosen to match the mood of the day. Candles flickered faintly, their light dancing across polished marble floors. The organ played a hymn so soft that it seemed to blend with the sound of quiet weeping. The royal family entered one by one, each figure marked by years of duty and dignity. King Charles sat in his place near the front, his expression firm but weary. Queen Camilla was missing, unwell it was said, and her absence added to the heaviness that already filled the room. Still, the ceremony carried on with grace. Passages of scripture echoed gently, followed by solemn hymns that filled every corner of the ancient cathedral. But all that calmness shifted when the Prince and Princess of Wales arrived. William and Catherine entered quietly, moving with their usual grace. William nodded politely to familiar faces, his composure unshaken. Beside him, Catherine walked with calm dignity, dressed in a simple black coat dress and a small hat, with a short veil that shaded her gentle face. As they stepped forward, the room fell silent, not just out of respect, but out of admiration. She carried an air of peace, even in grief. Then came the unexpected. Prince Andrew arrived, and beside him his former wife, Sarah Ferguson. Their presence drew quiet murmurs through the pews. Few had thought they would appear, for both had long stepped back from royal duties and public life. Yet there they were, walking down the aisle side by side as if time had rewound to an era long gone. Still, the service continued smoothly. The choir sang Ave Verum Corpus, one of the Duchess's favorite hymns. Heads bowed, eyes closed. Even those who had not known her well felt the weight of farewell. The melody wrapped around the cathedral like a prayer, and then, in that sacred stillness, something happened. Prince Andrew, seated a few rows behind the Prince and Princess of Wales, was seen gazing at Catherine. It wasn't a simple glance, it was a long, fixed stare. His eyes, cold and sharp, followed her as she sat with quiet grace beside her husband. Those who noticed felt an uneasy chill run through the air. A faint smirk touched his lips, one that didn't belong in a place of mourning. It was a moment that broke the solemn rhythm of the day. For a brief second, it felt as though the cathedral itself had gone cold. Some tried to look away, pretending not to see. Others whispered under their breath, their faces tightening with disbelief. Catherine, ever composed, did not respond. She kept her eyes down, her hands folded, her posture steady as a statue. But those who know the royals could sense it. Prince William noticed. He did not speak, he did not turn. But there was a tension in his shoulders, a quiet warning in his stillness. The future king's calm was unshaken, yet his silence spoke volumes. The rest of the service passed in uneasy peace. The prayers continued, the choir sang once more, and the final blessing echoed through the great hall. Yet even as guests rose to leave, that stare lingered, not in the air, but in memory. It became the quiet story whispered among attendees, the moment that turned a funeral into something else entirely. As the royals filed out, the cameras captured what words could not. William walked beside her, close, protective, his hand brushing hers as if to remind her that she was never alone. Outside, the bells of Westminster tolled in slow rhythm, marking the end of the Duchess's final farewell. But for those who had witnessed that unsettling exchange, the sound carried another meaning, the echo of a stare that would not soon be forgotten. That day was meant to honor a life of quiet service. Yet in the midst of that stillness, one look from Prince Andrew changed everything, and though no words were spoken, it was clear. Some moments, even in silence, can speak louder than any prayer. The moment. The silence broke. It was supposed to end in peace, quiet hymns, bowed heads, and solemn goodbyes. Yet, as the final moments of the Duchess of Kent's funeral unfolded, something in the air began to shift. The calm control that had marked the day started to crumble, and all eyes turned, slowly, toward one man, Prince Andrew. From the start, there had been tension. It hung over the cathedral like a heavy cloud. Andrew's demeanor throughout the service was uneasy, his movements restless. While others kept still and composed, he leaned forward again and again, trying to catch someone's eye. Sarah Ferguson, standing close by, did her best to soften the mood. Every now and then she gave him a small smile or whispered something under her breath, perhaps hoping to calm him, but her efforts fell flat. The distance between Andrew and the rest of the royals only seemed to grow wider as the minutes passed. It was not open hostility, no one spoke, no one glared, but it was the kind of silence that hurt more than words, a cold, polite rejection that echoed louder than any public argument. When Andrew tried to whisper to a cousin, the cousin kept his gaze on the hymn sheet. When he offered a hand, it was ignored. Every gesture of connection met the same quiet wall. Still, Andrew's gaze did not rest. His eyes wandered over the pews, moving from face to face, searching for someone who might look back, someone who might still see him as part of the family. But there was nothing, just the steady rhythm of prayers, the sound of the choir, and the cold awareness that he stood alone. As the service neared its end, that loneliness seemed to harden into something else, determination. It was then that it became clear whom he meant to approach, Prince William. The moment the final hymn ended, the congregation began to rise. The soft rustle of clothing and quiet footsteps filled the grand cathedral. William and Catherine stood together at the aisle side by side, still and composed. Their presence drew attention, not because of their titles, but because of the quiet unity between them. William's hands rested calmly in front of him. Catherine stood close, her black veil partly shadowing her face, her posture gentle yet strong. Andrew began to move, slowly at first, then with more purpose. His steps were small but steady, as though he was testing how far he could go. Sarah followed just a little behind, her expression careful, her eyes flickering nervously from face to face. She seemed to sense what was about to happen, and what it could mean. Andrew leaned slightly toward William, perhaps to speak or offer a word. But William gave no opening. He did not turn his head. He did not move his eyes. His face stayed firm, calm, and unreadable. That stillness alone carried power. The message was silent but unmistakable. There would be no conversation. Not here, not now. Catherine stood beside her husband, her presence soft yet unwavering. She did not glance toward Andrew, but her closeness to William said everything. She stood with him fully, offering silent support. Together they faced forward, bound by understanding. Andrew hesitated, caught in the stillness. He shifted slightly as if trying again, but the wall between them only grew stronger. William's silence was like a line drawn firmly on the stone floor. There would be no crossing it. The air grew thick, the kind of tension that makes hearts beat faster even in a room full of prayer. Those nearby noticed. It was rare, almost unthinkable, to see such visible strain between senior royals in public, especially during a funeral. Yet there it was, plain for all to see. The organ began to play the final notes. The coffin of the Duchess of Kent was lifted and carried slowly down the aisle. Together they moved forward, calm and united. Behind them, Andrew and Sarah followed. The space between them and the rest of the family was small in distance but vast in meaning. Every step, every glance, every silence carried the story of a deeper divide. Outside, cameras captured the scene as the family emerged into the gray afternoon light. The expressions told everything. William, steady and composed. Catherine, graceful and calm. Andrew, tense and unreadable. But the tension did not end at the cathedral doors. Later that day, while most expected Andrew to stay quiet, perhaps to reflect, or even to apologize, he did something few expected. He was seen leaving his residence in a Range Rover, his first public appearance since the funeral. The timing could not have been more striking. For some, it felt like defiance. For others, it was confusing. But for everyone watching, one thing was clear. The divide had never looked so wide. The balance between his presence at the funeral, his lack of remorse, and his bold reappearance left many stunned. It was not just a royal family in mourning that day. It was a family at its breaking point, and in that quiet tension between a prince and his nephew, between silence and defiance, the monarchy's fragility was laid bare for all to see. The Duchess's farewell was meant to be a day of unity, but by the end it became something else entirely. A moment when unspoken truths could no longer be hidden behind polite smiles and royal composure. The quiet grace of the Duchess of Kent. Catherine Lucy Mary Worsley was born on the 22nd of February 1933 at Hovingham Hall in Yorkshire. Her childhood was peaceful, surrounded by nature, music, and family warmth. While others dreamed of fame, little Catherine found joy in the simple things: long walks through the gardens, soft piano notes echoing through quiet rooms, and laughter shared at family dinners. Even as a child, her gentle spirit shone through. She attended Queen Margaret's School in York, where she worked diligently and discovered a deep love for teaching. Later at Oxford, she trained as a teacher, determined to help children believe in themselves. "Music," she once said softly, "teaches us to listen, not just to sound, but to each other." Those words became the quiet melody of her life. Then, in 1961, her world changed forever. Overnight, Catherine became the Duchess of Kent, stepping into a world of duty, glamour, and centuries-old tradition. At first, she fulfilled every royal expectation, attending events, opening hospitals, and supporting charities. Yet beneath the glittering crown, her heart longed for something real. She was shy, kind, and uncomfortable with fame. While others thrived in the spotlight, she preferred quiet conversations, where she could listen and connect. It was this love for people and music that led her down a different path. The Duchess began visiting schools, sitting among children, asking about their dreams, and encouraging them to sing. She wasn't the type to give a quick speech and leave. She stayed, listened, and truly cared. Those who met her never forgot her warmth. Then came a turning point. In 1994, she made a deeply personal decision. She converted to Roman Catholicism. No senior royal had done so in more than 400 years. Yet, she did it quietly, without fanfare, simply following her heart. Her faith was private, not political, and it became her guiding strength. 2 years later, she made another choice that stunned many. In 1996, the Duchess stepped back from royal duties. But instead of retreating into comfort, she began teaching music in Hull, one of England's poorer areas. She was simply Mrs. Kent. The children she taught often had no idea of her royal past. They only saw a gentle teacher who believed every child had a song worth hearing. Her classrooms were filled with laughter, encouragement, and the sound of young voices finding confidence. From that work came her greatest achievement, the founding of Future Talent in 2004. The charity helped gifted children from underprivileged backgrounds pursue their musical dreams. Many went on to become professionals, always remembering the Duchess who believed in them. In 2002, she quietly stopped using her royal title altogether. Most would cling to such privilege, but not her. She wanted freedom, to live simply, to serve without ceremony. Friends often spoke of her humility, her love for animals, and the peace she found in ordinary life. Her marriage to the Duke of Kent faced its challenges, yet she never spoke ill of him. Even as the royal world swirled with scandals and headlines, she stayed untouched, steady, private, and kind. Two paths, one legacy. The difference between the Duchess of Kent and Prince Andrew could not have been more striking. She was grace in silence, he was noise in disgrace. She had chosen humility over privilege, while he clung to titles even as they slipped through his fingers. The Duchess of Kent had once lived at the heart of royal life. She attended grand events, wore the jewels, and stood beside kings and queens. But one day, quietly and without fuss, she stepped away. She gave up her royal titles, left behind the glittering palaces, and moved to Hull, where she began teaching music. She didn't seek attention or applause. She found peace in simplicity. As she once said softly, "Music reaches where words cannot." That was her truth. She walked away from power and status but gained something greater, respect that never faded. The people admired her not for what she had, but for what she gave up. Her life became a quiet song of service and kindness. Even after leaving royal duties, she continued to inspire through her gentle nature and deep faith. Prince Andrew, on the other hand, walked the opposite road. Where she let go of privilege with grace, he held on with desperation. For years, he carried himself with the confidence of someone untouchable, believing his title would protect him. But the scandals that followed shattered that illusion. His connection to Jeffrey Epstein brought shame upon the royal family. Then came the disastrous television interview that was meant to clear his name, but instead exposed his arrogance and lack of remorse. When legal settlements followed, whatever remained of his dignity was lost. Unlike the Duchess, who slipped into ordinary life with quiet strength, Andrew's downfall was loud and humiliating. The more he tried to defend himself, the deeper he fell. This contrast between them mattered deeply at her funeral. The day was meant to honor a woman who had lived with faith, compassion, and humility. The Duchess of Kent represented everything noble about royal life: duty without pride, service without reward. But Andrew's behavior during that solemn service told another story. As the choir sang and prayers filled the air, Andrew's restless movements caught attention. His faint smirks, his wandering stares, and his failed attempts to spark conversations felt deeply out of place. On a day meant for reflection and reverence, his actions seemed to dishonor not just the memory of the Duchess, but the dignity of the entire royal family. Prince William noticed, "Those who know him say that his calm often hides deep conviction." That day his silence spoke louder than words. When Andrew's cold stare turned toward Catherine, William did not respond with anger or argument. He simply refused to engage. That refusal was his statement, clear, firm, and final. He wasn't just standing beside his wife in quiet protection, he was standing for something greater. In his eyes, the Duchess of Kent had been everything the monarchy was meant to be: loyal, humble, and strong. Her life was proof that respect could be earned not through power, but through goodness. For William, to let Andrew's behavior go unchecked would have been to betray that legacy. So, as he stood there in the cathedral, composed and unflinching, William drew a line. It was a silent declaration that integrity still mattered, that the crown must be built on character, not comfort. The Duchess had strengthened the royal family through sacrifice and grace. Andrew, through his actions, had weakened it through scandal and shame. The contrast between the two could not have been clearer. One left behind a story of service and faith, the other, a trail of controversy and mistrust. And on that day, at that moment, William made his choice. By turning away from Andrew, he wasn't being cruel. He was protecting the memory of a woman who had given her life to the crown and upheld its meaning when others could not. His silence was his shield for Catherine, for the monarchy, and for the values that the Duchess of Kent had embodied so completely. When the funeral ended and the organ's final notes echoed through the cathedral, the message lingered in the air. Some legacies are built on titles, others on truth. The Duchess of Kent had chosen truth, and in the end it made her timeless. Prince Andrew had chosen otherwise, and that choice left him standing in the shadows. The Duchess's farewell became a reflection of everything she represented: quiet grace, deep faith, and the strength to walk away from power with her head held high. And as William guided Catherine out of the cathedral, his face calm and steady, it was clear that he carried that same belief forward. For in the House of Windsor, legacies are not written by crowns or scandals but by hearts, and hers will always shine brighter than his. But this isn't the end. The true scandal is about to be revealed. Watch closely. The next phase will either destroy or change the monarchy completely.